So this weekend, Christopher Nolan's movie, The Odyssey, opened as a giant blockbuster. But here's something that almost no one noticed. The Odyssey was never written down for hundreds of years. It was sung out loud long before anyone could read it. And I think that one thing points to something huge that's happening to us right now. Humans are quietly leaving the age of reading and returning to an age of watching and listening. I think that single change is reshaping how we think, how we vote, who we trust, and where I think the whole world is headed. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what that means and why I believe it ends far better than the news makes you think. By the end of this video, you'll finally have a name for a feeling that you've probably had for several years, that something big is shifting underneath our feet. I'm Neil K. Shah, a Johns Hopkins and NIH-funded caregiving researcher and the CEO of Carryaya. I've helped thousands of families navigating aging, dementia, and serious illness. But I also spend a lot of time thinking about the human mind, how it changes, and how we can stay connected to each other across generations. Over the past couple of years, I read 4 different books that slowly changed how I see the world. Then, thinking about the Odyssey movie this weekend, this all clicked for me into one big idea that I'm sharing for the very first time. So let me connect the dots for you. First, let's start with that movie, because I think the movie really hides a clue. The Odyssey movie opened a huge fanfare. It was one of the biggest, blockbuster launches in recent years, $250 million at the box office. Some people even booked their tickets a year early. Some even showed up to the premiere in bronze Greek helmets. It was like a full-blown cultural event. But think about what we all lined up for. Homer's epic, The Odyssey, is one of the oldest stories in the Western world. But it was an epic poem that was sung aloud around fires thousands of years ago. And the way we experience it even today wasn't by reading. It was by sitting together in dark theaters, in a crowd, being told a story, almost exactly the way people gathered to hear it 3,000 years ago. I think that's not random, but that's a clue about where all of us are heading. And to get there, we're going to have to answer a simple question with a surprising answer. Who was Homer? For centuries, people assumed that Homer was one poet who sat down and wrote his epics, like a novelist. Well, in the 1930s, a Harvard scholar named Milman Parry proved that was wrong. Parry noticed the poems were stitched together from repeating phrases like rosy-fingered dawn, the wine-dark sea, swift-footed Achilles. These same phrases repeating over and over. To us, they look like cliches, but Parry saw that they were tools. Each one fit the beat of the line perfectly, so that a singer could grab it on the fly and keep the song flowing, the way a musician reaches for a familiar chord. What if Homer wasn't writing, but Homer was a line of singers making it up real time from a giant kit of ready-made parts and phrases? To prove it, Parry traveled into the mountains of the Balkans and found village singers who still did this in the 1930s in what we'd call modern Yugoslavia, performing epic poems for hours, never the same way twice, never from a page. He recorded thousands of these folk songs. And the big takeaway here is, for almost all of human history, knowledge didn't live on the printed pages. It flowed from people's mouths. And a world where knowledge flows from people's mouths, I think it grows a very different kind of mind. So how different? That's where I think things get really strange. The strangest idea I read comes from a 1976 book by a Princeton psychologist named Julian Jaynes. It's called The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Jaynes' hypothesis, I think, is quite bold. Before writing spread, humans may not have had an inner voice at all. No private I that's quietly narrating your life the way that one is doing in your head right now. Instead, Jaynes thought the mind worked in 2 parts before that. One hemisphere gave orders, the other hemisphere heard those orders as a real voice out loud and simply believed it was a god. There was no inner debate. The voice just speaks to you and you obey. He called this the bicameral mind, which just means 2 chambers. His first piece of evidence was the Iliad, Homer's epic war poem. If you read it closely, the heroes almost never stop to reflect. When Achilles is about to attack his own commander, he doesn't argue with himself. A goddess appears, grabs him by the hair, and tells him to stop. To Jaynes, the gods weren't poetry, but they were how an early mind felt its own decisions, almost as commands from the outside. Then came the Odyssey, and Jaynes saw the first sign of change. Its hero, Odysseus, is famous for thinking. He plans, he schemes, he lies, and you cannot lie without an inner world. You have to hold the truth in one hand and a fib in the other, in private at the same time. Trapped in the cave of a one-eyed giant, Odysseus doesn't wait for a god. He invents a trick, telling the Cyclops his name is Nobody. So when the blinded monster screams that nobody heard him, no help comes. And in another quiet, remarkable moment, Odysseus talks to his own pounding heart and tells it to hold steady. Janes interpreted this as the birth of the modern I. Many scholars believe that what we think of as Homer's Iliad and Homer's Odyssey were composed a century or more apart by different singers in a rapidly changing world, so that the gap between these two poems may not be just a gap in time, it may be a gap between two different ways of being human, one where the voices come from the gods, and one where they come from the inside and becomes you. And Janes didn't stop at the Greeks. He said, look at the Bible. In its oldest stories, God simply walks and talks with people, with Adam in the garden, with Abraham, with Moses hearing a voice from a burning bush. The voice is loud, direct, and external. But in later books like Ecclesiastes, the tone flips completely. It's all doubt, reflection, and a searching inner voice asking what any of it means. The commands went quiet, and the conversation moved inside the skull. Janes pointed to something else too. All across the ancient world, once the voices faded, people built oracles, hired prophets, and bowed to idols, statues that they truly believed spoke to them. Janes read that as humanity missing the inner voices and desperately trying to get them back. And we see faint echoes of that even today. People who swear they hear a late parent's voice guiding hard choice, or a small child chatting with an imaginary friend who talks back. Now, to be clear, this theory is disputed. No brain scan can prove it, and plenty of experts read the evidence totally differently. The scientist Richard Dawkins once said the book is either complete nonsense or pure genius, and admitted he couldn't decide which. So, hold the details loosely, but I think the core of the theory, that the way we communicate can slowly reshape the way we think, I think that's not a fringe theory at all, and it's something that can tie this entire story together. Because if a change in media once helped to build the modern mind, then a change in media could be reshaping it again right now. For that, meet the clearest thinker in this story, a scholar named Walter Ong. In 1982, he argued that writing isn't just a way of recording speech, it quietly rewires how we think. Picture a spoken word. It's a sound. It lives for a second, then it's gone. In a world with no writing, if you don't remember it, it never happened. So people in spoken cultures thought in ways built for memory. Their ideas came in a simple string: this, then this, then this. They leaned on catchy phrases and proverbs, repeated things often, and honored the elders who kept the stories alive. Everything was dramatic, deeply personal, and close to daily life. Writing broke all of that and handed us something amazing. Once you could park a thought on a page, you no longer had to memorize it. That freed up the mind to do something new, to analyze, to build long chains of complex logic, to make laws, categories, science. And reading does one more quiet, powerful thing. It puts one person alone with a page in silence. Ong believed that alone time helped create our whole sense of being a private, separate self. Here's another story I love. When writing was brand new, the smartest people alive were actually afraid of it. Around 370 BC, in a dialogue by Plato, Socrates warns that writing will weaken people's memory and give them only the appearance of wisdom. They'll read a lot, but understand little. And it's the exact same fear people have today about smartphones and the internet. And the funny part of all this is we only know Socrates said it because his student wrote it down. If this kind of history interests you, please subscribe and follow this page because I love talking about this stuff. So, I think writing changed us once. That's indisputable. Then one man saw the whole pattern and guessed where it was going. In the 1960s, a professor named Marshall McLuhan gave us a phrase, you've probably heard even if you don't know the source. The medium is the message. His idea was simple but bold and I think profound. The form of a medium changes us more than the content inside it. So it's not just the TV show, it's the television itself. Not just the post you see, but the feed. McLuhan said, print made us think in straight lines, orderly, one thing at a time, private and calm. But electronic media, radio, TV, and now the internet, will pull us back into a world of sound. And sound doesn't come at you in a line. It surrounds you all at once from everywhere. It's shared and it's emotional. Long before the internet existed, he predicted that these media would shrink the world into what he called a global village. And what people forget, he didn't mean that as good news. He expected the global village to be loud, tribal, and anxious, everyone watching and judging everyone else all at the same time. And he basically predicted, the comment section that we have in social media today. But if you put it together, you get one clean idea. Human history isn't a straight climb from simple speech to fancy text, but potentially a loop. We started in a spoken world, writing and the printing press pulled us out of it, into about 500 years of the silent private page. And now that page is fading, and we're swinging back toward a spoken world. Only this time, an electric one. I think that was the clue inside the Odyssey movie all along. We rushed to a dark room to be told a story together, because deep down, that's what our species is built for. And we can prove that swing just with plain numbers. Reading is dropping fast. The big national school test found that in 2024, reading scores fell massively. About 40% of fourth graders now read below the most basic level, the worst in over 20 years. Among eighth graders, about a third fell below basic, the worst ever recorded. Reading for fun is falling off a cliff. Among 13-year-olds, the share who read for fun, almost daily, dropped from 27% just 10 years ago to 14% now. It's almost cut in half in 10 years. This hits adults too. A national survey found the share who read even one book in the past year fell to 48%, the lowest on record. Gallup found the average American read about 13 books a year, down from more than 15 a few years prior. Now, look at what took its place. In 2025, an estimated 228 million Americans listened to digital audio every month, and podcast listening hit an all-time high. Regular cable and satellite TV fell to about half of homes. Short-form video, TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts, now owns the hours that we used to give to print. So we didn't stop loving stories. I think we stopped reading them and went back to hearing them and watching them. And here's a tiny story that I think captures the essence of this. Around the year 397, a man named Augustine wrote down how amazed he was to watch his teacher read silently. Eyes moving down the page, lips still, no sound at all. It was so unusual to him that it was worth writing about. Silent reading was once strange enough to stop a brilliant man in his tracks. Then for a few centuries it became normal, and now in your lifetime we're drifting back to voices, back to faces, back to sound. If this is changing how you see your own phone, share it with one person who keeps saying nobody reads anymore. Because I think this isn't the end of the story, it's just the middle of the story. Now a part that I'll handle carefully because it's about politics. And I'm describing a pattern and really not taking sides here. If the way that we share words is swinging from print back to voice and video, then the people who win in public life should be changing too. In the age of print, you won with long, carefully written arguments. In a spoken age, something different wins. Look at two of the biggest political rises of the last decade from opposite ends. On the one end, Donald Trump. Judged like a written essay, his style can look scattered, short burst, heavy repetition, few straight lines. But judged by the new rules of spoken culture, it fits the medium almost perfectly. Simple, repeated, dramatic, and built on sticky nicknames that lodge in your memory. I don't think that's random. It's the same techniques that Homer used in his story to make swift-footed Achilles unforgettable, because illustrative, vivid phrases like that repeat over and over in epic poems. Think about it, it's the same rhetorical style when Trump says descriptions like crooked Hillary, because it works in a spoken culture the way it wouldn't in writing. A 2017 study found that his speaking style scored the highest among rivals on being informal, plain language, spoken, and full of energy. On the other end, Zohran Mamdani, who just won the New York City's mayor's race in late 2025 and took office earlier this year, his campaign was built entirely for the phone screen, short, straight-to-the-camera videos, talking like a regular person instead of reading a press release. He reportedly won about 78% of voters under 30. Different party, different generation, but similar media playbook. Make it feel real, present, feel like a friend talking straight to you, not an institution talking down at you. So let me be clear, this isn't about whether either man is right, but it's about analyzing form. I think in this new spoken world, the things that get rewarded are presence, feeling, simplicity, and the sense of a real, unscripted voice on any side. That shift is really measurable. We're seeing it across party lines now, which raises a harder question. Trust used to flow down from a few big institutions. Where does it go now suddenly when everyone has a microphone? A former CIA analyst named Martin Gurry answered that question in a great book I'd recommend called The Revolt of the Public. His point was very simple and kind of uncomfortable. For most of the last century, big institutions held power because they controlled the flow of information. A few big networks, a few newspapers, the government, the universities. They decided what counted as true, and the rest of us just mostly had to take it. The public couldn't really talk back. By the way, a small fact here worth noting, the word authority comes from author, the one who gets to write the story. Then, Gurry says, the internet handed a microphone to everyone at once. And the first thing all that information revealed wasn't wisdom, but it was every mistake that the gatekeepers used to be able to smooth over. Every error, every broken promise, now filmed, shared, and seen by millions in seconds. The curtain got pulled back for good. And Gurry says the public reacted with what he calls negation. A huge power to tear down institutions, but almost no power to build something better in their place. Crowds big enough to topple, but too scattered to govern. And that's an echo from our Odyssey movie. While Odysseus is away, his palace fills with all the suitors, the mob of young men who eat his food, insult his family, obey no one. They can wreck a whole kingdom, but what they can't do is run it. His home is stuck, full of noise, waiting for order to come back. I think Gurry would recognize that instantly. So might you if you've been watching the news lately. So, are we just stuck there in a house full of shouting forever? I personally don't think so, because history has already run this exact experiment. In the 1400s, a German named Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, that is, printing books with movable type. And here's what a few people really think about. The printing press did not bring instant peace and wisdom. If you think about it, it brought a century of chaos at first. Once ordinary people could read scripture themselves, the old grip on truth cracked. New ideas raced across Europe on printed pages faster than any authority could stop. That helped spark the Reformation, and the Reformation helped spark more than 100 years of religious war, so brutal that it killed a shocking share of Central Europe. The greatest tool for spreading knowledge in history first delivered decades of rumor, panic, and bloodshed. Think about that. And then it settled. Once people learned to live with print, to check sources, to build new institutions that fit it, the same press gave us modern science, the Enlightenment, and democracy. The tool that first broke the world ended up rebuilding it even better. I think every time we've changed how we communicate, speech to writing, writing to print, print to screens, we kind of get similar shifts. A generation or two of dizziness, and then a new and richer balance. Ours today is just moving faster and squeezing centuries of change into decades. I think that's why it feels like whiplash. But I think it has a positive sign of where it's going. Let me tell you where I think it goes and what it asks of you. The old institutions built for the age of print, I think, will keep wobbling. But new ones will rise in their place. Leaders, communities, and organizations that are built for a world of voice and video. Ones that are more open, more honest, and closer to the people that they serve. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. We're living right now in the messy middle, that turn between the two worlds. And the middle always feels like too much noise and not enough stable ground under your feet. But I think the far side of this can be bright. And I think what matters the most, we don't just have to wait for it. All of us can actively build it. In calm times, it can feel like one person doesn't change much, in the world. But in a chaotic transition like this one, the opposite, I think, is true. When old rules are loosening and new ones aren't written yet, every act of kindness, every honest word, every good idea that you put out in the world carries more weight, not less. The stories we choose to tell, the way we choose to treat each other, the calm we can bring to the loudness around us, I think those are the raw materials that the next era will get built from. So you don't just have to sit there and watch this change happen. You can be one of the people deciding what it becomes. And this is where the people I work with every day come in. Older adults, the families who care for them, the generations that grew up with a printed word. I think they carry something that the world is starved for. Memory, judgment, patience, stories worth telling. The tools that feel so strange are really the oldest there are. A voice, a face, a story shared with people who lean in to listen. I think these stories are exactly what the new world needs. So think about where the Odyssey epic, was pointed. It wasn't at the monsters or at the war. It was pointed at one Greek word, nostos, the homecoming. After 20 years of storms, everything Odysseus survives. He survives for one reason, to sit again by his own fire with the people he loves, and to be known with his community. I think that's the fire we're all walking back towards. What if the 500 years of the printed page were just a remarkable chapter in history and it's closing now? What waits on the other side isn't the end of thinking. It's a return to the campfire. Louder, faster, and worldwide, but still at heart, just people gathered in the dark telling each other the story of how to make it home. If this made you think and gave you a little hope tonight, please send it to one person who may need to hear it. And subscribe so that the next deep dive finds you. And do the most human thing there is. Turn to someone you love and tell them a story. I'm Neil K. Shah. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.